With the way things are going economically, I've been seriously thinking about becoming more resourceful, stretching every single dollar.
Hmm.
It makes you wonder if folks in the past, facing, well, tougher times, already cracked this code.
Oh, they absolutely did. They
Yeah,
did indeed.
right.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into the Great Depression, which was, a period where necessity truly was the mother of invention,
Hmm.
especially for frugal living.
Yeah.
We've actually unearthed 25 specific ideas that were commonplace then, and the surprising thing is how many are still incredibly relevant and effective in 2025.
Exactly. This isn't just some dusty history lesson, is it?
Not at all.
Our mission here is to kind of distill the most practical, actionable, and, well, insightful ways you can be more resourceful and save money today,
Hmm.
drawing direct inspiration from a time when people just had to be ingenious. And we're also going to see how these aren't just about pinching pennies, but they also tap into more sustainable, more mindful ways of living.
That's a great point. What's fascinating here is that when resources are scarce, it often sparks creativity, doesn't it? And
Mm.
maybe a deeper appreciation for the things we actually have.
Okay, let's get into it then. One overarching principle from that era that really struck me is this saying, use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. It
Yes,
wasn't just a cute slogan, right? It was like a fundamental mindset.
precisely. The whole concept of disposability was largely absent back then. The focus was absolutely on extending the life cycle of everything and finding resourceful fixes rather than an immediate replacement.
Which leads us perfectly to our first set of ideas, starting with number 2 from our list, learning to mend clothes.
Ah, yes.
Back then, darning socks, patching jeans, that wasn't a hobby, it was just essential. Think about the cumulative savings of not constantly buying new stuff. It's a skill that seems almost, I don't know, revolutionary today.
It really does. And beyond the obvious financial benefits, there's this growing movement now around visible mending, turning repairs into a kind of personal expression and valuing the history of an item.
Oh, interesting.
Plus, reducing textile waste is a huge environmental benefit that really resonates today. You can even find modern repair kits now to make it easier.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, speaking of getting the most out of basics, idea number 3 is baking your own bread. We saw a bit of a comeback for this recently, didn't we?
We did.
What were the core advantages during the Depression beyond just the cost savings?
Well, cost was definitely a major driver, yeah. But homemade bread also often offered better nutrition compared to some of the commercially available options back then.
Okay.
And let's not forget the sensory experience, that smell of baking bread, the satisfaction of creating something nourishing with your own hands. It fostered a connection to basic food production that, well, many of us have kind of lost.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to go with that freshly baked bread, idea number 4 is all about eating frugal, filling meals. So think simple staples like soups, stews, potatoes.
The classics.
How did that approach help families stretch their, meager food budgets?
Well, these meals are just inherently economical, aren't they? Because they rely on inexpensive, often locally sourced ingredients. They're also fantastic for feeding a crowd. And, crucially, they provide leftovers, minimizing food waste.
Good point.
Plus, they tend to be really satiating, so they reduce the temptation to splurge on less filling, maybe more expensive options.
Okay, here's one that gets really interesting. Idea number 5, saving cooking fat.
Ah, yes.
Now, today we often hear about limiting fat intake. What was the rationale behind this practice back then? Was it purely about not wasting a single thing?
Exactly that. It was all about extracting every bit of value. Fats like, say, bacon grease weren't seen as something to discard at all. They were a valuable cooking medium, adding flavor and richness to other dishes, especially vegetables, maybe.
Right.
In a time of scarcity, every calorie and every bit of flavor counted. There's even some historical context around fat playing a different perceived nutritional role back then, too.
Fascinating. Okay, moving from the kitchen to the rest of the house. Idea number 6 is making your own cleaning products, using things like vinegar, lemon juice, baking soda.
Simple stuff.
Were these just old wives' tales, or were they genuinely effective?
Oh, they were surprisingly effective, and definitely the go-to for many households. Commercial cleaners were often a real luxury.
I bet.
These basic ingredients are naturally antibacterial, degreasing, and deodorizing. Plus, you avoid the harsh chemicals and all that single-use plastic packaging that are so prevalent today, which aligns perfectly with a more sustainable lifestyle.
Definitely a greener approach, yeah. Okay, idea number 7 takes us outdoors. Growing your own food. We've all heard about victory gardens. How crucial were those, really? And is there a modern parallel?
Victory gardens were incredibly important, absolutely. They provided a vital source of fresh produce during both wartime and the Depression, supplementing pretty meager diets and reducing reliance on strained supply chains.
Makes sense.
The modern parallel, well, it's the growing urban farming and home gardening movement we see now. Even just growing a few herbs on a windowsill can provide fresh ingredients and, a little sense of self-sufficiency. There's even evidence suggesting mental health benefits from gardening.
Oh, I believe that. And back indoors, idea number 8, reusing containers. It sounds almost too simple, but I bet this habit had a real impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jars, tins, they weren't just tossed out like they often are today. They became versatile storage solutions for literally everything. Food, leftovers, buttons, nails, you name it.
Right.
It just reflects a mindset of valuing the object beyond its initial purpose,
Yeah.
A habit that could significantly reduce our reliance on disposable packaging today.
That mindset of not wasting extended to fabrics too, didn't it? With idea number 9, crafting from leftovers. I've heard stories of people making like entire outfits from scraps.
Indeed, scraps of fabric were meticulously saved and transformed into quilts, clothing, other household textiles. It really speaks to both frugality and, frankly, an impressive level of creativity and skill.
Yeah.
Think about the modern quilting and upcycling movements. They definitely echo this Depression-era ingenuity.
And then there's idea number 10, using cloth instead of paper. When you
Good.
think about how much paper towel we go through, this one really hits home.
Oh, exactly. Paper products were less accessible and more expensive then. Reusable cloth rags just served multiple purposes, cleaning, drying, even sometimes as napkins. It's such a simple switch that can dramatically reduce both household waste and spending.
Okay, let's talk utilities for a bit. Idea number 11, turning off lights and unplugging appliances. Seems obvious, maybe, but was energy conservation a major focus back then?
Oh, it was critical.
Yeah.
Electricity costs were a significant chunk of household budgets,
Mm.
and access wasn't even universal. So developing the habit of conserving energy was a very direct way to manage expenses.
Right.
And of course, in 2025, this practice is even more vital, isn't it, for both saving money and reducing our environmental footprint.
Absolutely. Then there's idea number 12, which might raise an eyebrow or two today, reusing gray water. For anyone unfamiliar, what exactly is gray water and how did this work?
Okay, so gray water is basically wastewater from relatively clean sources, or
Right.
showers, sinks, washing machines. Importantly, not toilet water.
Gotcha.
During the Depression, people would sometimes collect and reuse this water for non-potable uses, like watering plants or maybe cleaning floors. Now, while the principle of water conservation is totally sound, modern regulations and safety concerns around potential contaminants mean this isn't quite as straightforward today.
Okay.
However, practices like using rainwater barrels for gardening, that achieves a similar goal safely.
Interesting distinction. Okay, idea number 13 is making your own soap. That sounds like a pretty involved process.
It was, yeah, but it was a common household task. Basic soap was often made using readily available ingredients like animal fat lard, maybe, and lye, which they derived from wood ash.
Wow.
While most people in 2025 wouldn't probably undertake this, it just highlights the level of self-sufficiency that was often necessary back then.
Absolutely. Okay, shifting gears a bit to social aspects. Idea number 14 is giving handmade gifts. That feels like such a contrast to our often very consumer-driven gift culture today.
Precisely. Handmade gifts were not only more budget-friendly, obviously, but they also often carried much more personal meaning.
Yeah.
The time and effort invested in actually creating something was a tangible expression of care.
Yeah.
It's a valuable reminder that thoughtfulness often outweighs monetary value, doesn't it?
I love that. And idea number 15 focuses on entertainment, entertaining at home.
Right.
Without all our screens and devices, what did leisure time even look like?
Well, entertainment was generally simpler, definitely more interactive, and very family-focused. Think board games, storytelling, singing, maybe playing musical instruments if they had them.
Right.
It really relied on creativity and the simple joy of shared experiences rather than, commercialized forms of amusement.
Let's circle back to extending the life of things. Idea number 16 reinforces an earlier point, turning worn-out clothes into rags. So even at the very, very end of their life as clothing, textiles still had a use.
Exactly. Nothing was truly wasted if it could be helped. Old garments became cleaning cloths, worn towels were repurposed. It was all about maximizing the value of every single possession until it was absolutely unusable in any other form.
And idea number 17 is something many of us can probably relate to, regardless of the era, using hand-me-downs.
Oh, yeah. It was just a very common and incredibly practical way to clothe families, especially larger ones, clothes were passed down from older to younger siblings, extending their lifespan and saving significant expense.
Hmm.
It also kind of fostered a sense of community, or at least continuity within the family.
Idea number 18 focuses on laundry, hand washing and line drying. I just can't imagine the time commitment that involves.
Certainly much more labor intensive, no doubt about it, but it resulted in significant savings on energy costs or fuel costs if heating water was involved.
Sure.
Line drawing, of course, still offers those same energy savings today and is actually an increasingly popular choice for environmental reasons.
Good point. Idea number 19 is all about food preservation, canning and preserving. I remember my grandparents doing this. Why was it such a vital skill during the Depression?
Oh, canning and preserving were absolutely crucial for ensuring a year-round food supply, especially for families who had gardens or maybe could buy produce in bulk cheaply during harvest season.
Right.
It prevented food waste, which was critical, and it provided a real sense of food security through the leaner months.
And finally, in this segment, idea number 20, repurposing broken items. It's that theme again of resourcefulness and creativity coming through. Can you give some specific examples, maybe?
Certainly. Think like a broken chair might have its sturdy legs repurposed to support a makeshift shelf. Or an old dress, maybe too worn or out of style, could be cut up and sewn into aprons or cleaning cloths.
That's smart.
The mindset was really to see potential in almost everything, to look beyond the original intended use.
Okay, our final segment delves into broader financial wisdom and community spirit. Idea number 21 is something we often overlook with our modern transportation options. Just walking more.
Yeah, seems basic, right? But during the Depression, owning a car was a definite luxury, and even paying for public transport could be prohibitive for many.
Sure.
So walking was often the primary way to get around. Beyond the obvious cost savings on transportation in 2025, we're also reminded of the significant health benefits of incorporating more walking into our daily lives.
True that. Okay, idea number 22 is fascinating. Bartering and swapping. It feels like a skill we've almost completely lost today.
It does, doesn't it? Bartering, directly exchanging goods and services without any money changing hands was a vital way for people to meet their needs when cash was incredibly scarce.
Like what?
Well, someone might trade surplus vegetables from their garden for a neighbor's sewing skills, maybe to mend clothes, for example. While it's less prevalent today in that formal sense, the underlying principle of community exchange and leveraging different skills is still really powerful. And you do see some resurgence in local community groups or online swapping platforms.
Idea number 23 emphasizes intentionality around food, meal planning around existing food. That sounds like a really effective way to minimize food waste now.
Oh, it's incredibly effective. By consciously planning meals based on what you already have on hand in the fridge, the pantry, you reduce those impulse buys at the store, and you ensure that food doesn't spoil before you actually have a chance to use it.
Right.
It's a simple strategy, but it has a significant impact on both your wallet and the environment.
Building on that mindful approach to food, idea number 24 is using fillers in meals. What exactly did that entail?
Yeah, this was a pretty clever way to make more expensive ingredients, typically meat, stretch further. People would add inexpensive fillers like oats or breadcrumbs to ground meat for meatloaf, or maybe beans and lentils to stews. It increased the volume and often the nutritional value of meals without significantly increasing the cost. Very resourceful.
That is smart. And finally, rounding out our list at number 25, budgeting carefully. I imagine that was absolutely non-negotiable back then.
Oh, it was essential for survival, truly. Families often meticulously tracked every single penny spent, sometimes, in handwritten ledgers.
Wow.
This level of financial awareness and control is just a timeless principle. And while we have sophisticated digital tools and apps now, the fundamental importance of knowing where your money is actually going remains completely unchanged.
This has been such an insightful look back, honestly. It really drives home the point that the frugality born out of necessity during the Depression wasn't just about, going without or deprivation.
Exactly. It really cultivated resourcefulness, it sparked creativity, it fostered strong community bonds, and it built remarkable resilience in people.
And it's just so clear that so many of these seemingly old-fashioned habits have profound relevance and, real practical application in our modern world today. They absolutely do. They serve as a really powerful reminder that mindful consumption and just appreciating the value of what we already have can lead to greater financial security and, frankly, a more sustainable way of life for all of us.
So as you, listening, consider your own habits.
Hmm.
Maybe think about which of these Depression-era ideas could you see making the biggest difference in your life. Could a little more mending, maybe some home baking, or just a more conscious effort to repurpose items be a bit of a game changer?
Hmm.
It's definitely worth considering how these principles of resourcefulness can shape a more secure and sustainable future for each of us.